Wilson Fisk's darkest secret is finally exposed in Daredevil Episode 8. Fisk wakes up in a cold sweat staring at a mysterious painting that's been teased throughout Season 1. What does it mean, and how is it connected to Wilson's dark past? As the episode unfolds, we find out that as a young kid, Wilson was made to stare at a white wall that looks similar to the painting while his father beat his mother. And we're left to wonder why Wilson would buy a painting that reminds him of this. So let's check in with Doug and Drew and get some reactions real quick. Why do you guys think Fisk bought this painting and put it where he did?
Well, he said it was in the earlier episode, it made him sad. And after seeing the flashbacks of, his dad making him sit and stare at a wall that looks just like the painting and saying, sit there and think about the kind of man you want to be. And that's what he was doing. Of course, then everything breaks loose over there, or his dad smacking his mom around a little bit, and he ends up getting up and killing his dad with a hammer. I think what he's doing is when he's buying it and he's putting it, the first thing he sees is that is the reminder of, I don't want to be my father. And he even made that comment, I have to remind myself every day that I'm not a monster and I'm not going to be cruel just to be cruel. I'm cruel when it's necessary. So it's just as a reminder of waking up and saying, don't be your dad.
Yeah, it's interesting that he says that, because he is a character with a heart, like a terrifying villain that seems to function by some kind of morality. But in this episode, I noticed that he kind of breaks that rule a little bit, because, Wesley is his most loyal friend, right? He's the one who's supporting him as his allies start to lose respect for him, start to think that, well, maybe he's not the guy for the job. And next thing you know, like while Wesley's trying to support him, Wilson's starting to lash out at him. And I kind of saw that as little bits and pieces of his dad kind of seeping through, even though he doesn't want them to be.
Well, he's also showing vulnerability right there, because he says he's scared. And in his position, he cannot allow anyone to see that he's scared. He has that reputation and he has to uphold that. And if somebody sees him upset, terrified, crying, then that just breaks down that perception.
Mm-hmm.
Well, another way to look at it is that his father did teach him a lesson. Not the right lesson, I'll say, but a lesson nonetheless. Now, Dominic Lombardozzi, the guy who plays Fisk's dad, love that actor. First saw him in Entourage, but I've seen him in a handful of other things. He was great in Reacher Season 2. Really good actor, and he does an excellent job here too. He just plays that typical New York dude. He's got that accent and everything. He's perfect for it. But when he says he feels sad when he looks at this painting, that's why he buys it. There could be a way he's looking at it as in, I remember staring at the same thing when I was weak. And it makes me sad because I wasn't strong enough then, but over time, his dad causing him to, kick the bully and things like that, he turned into.
Sorry, I thought I had that turned down.
He turned into somebody who isn't going to be weak, isn't going to be afraid. So maybe staring at that painting when he wakes up in the morning, when the nightmares end and he's got to calm down, he's just like staring here and he's like, all right, remember what you're doing. Your goal is to not be that kid who stares at that wall. You turn around, you look away from that, and you protect the ones you love no matter what, as we find out later in the episode.
So is this sort of like a dual reminder? Because he doesn't want to become the monster his dad is, but he doesn't want to be this weak little boy. And you kind of see shades of both of those things in the character in this episode too. So is it that he can't figure out how to toe the line in between those things? Is it that kind of struggle?
I don't know if he's struggling with it as much as it's there as a reminder. He doesn't struggle with going back and being that little kid. I think he just doesn't want to be that kid. And that's why he bought that. He wants that there every morning when he wakes up. And it's like, you stared at that thing as a weakling. We don't want that anymore. So remember, staring at that, you don't want that feeling again. You don't want to be sad. You don't want to be weak. Fight. Be strong. Be, a leader no matter what. So I don't think he's struggling with going back. I think he's constantly moving forward. His routine every morning, he does the exact same thing. He goes in, cooks a very perfect omelet or egg and whatever, and, sits down and, everything is very, very structured. So he's that kind of person that is just every day he's moving forward. So yeah, I don't think he's ever worried about going back. That's just there as a reminder what happens if you slack off.
He needs some practice with his knife skills, by the way. It was driving me insane watching him cut things with his little finger out there on top of the knife. I'm sorry. That's a big no-no. That finger slips and you cut it right off. You hold it like this. Come on.
So I sort of read this as he's trying to be this tough guy, but he sees that flashback of himself as a kid and covered in blood, right? I kind of think maybe there are some things that he never had a chance to cope with as a kid. And maybe he couldn't because he was the kid who was bullied. So, his mom clearly didn't help him cope. So I felt like maybe he just tried to power through it, and he's still got a piece of this traumatized child in him. But yet, I guess he becomes vulnerable in the episode because Gao sees that his biggest secret, which is his penthouse location, has, he's gotten lazy. He's let her discover it. So it's almost like he's starting to crumble a little bit, and he's going to have to lean into being one or the other. Like he's going to have to become the monster. I don't know. We get a glimpse of Wilson's family life that may have shaped him for the worst. His dad racked up a lot of debt, and his solution is to win the election to city council, where he thinks he'll be able to fill his own pockets with money under the table. His dad is delusional, though, and loses the election, probably never having a shot in the first place. He's also emotionally abusive. When one of Wilson's classmates at school makes fun of his dad, his father takes him over to the kid's house to confront him. He makes Wilson kick the kid while he's down, screaming, "Keep kicking him." The next time Wilson's father beats his mom, though, what his father taught him is going to come back to haunt him. Wilson picks up a hammer, kills his father, while screaming, "Keep kicking him." But the most head-scratching moment of the episode comes when Wilson's mom tells him to grab the saw. Yep, they cut up the body for reasons and then drop the body parts off in the river over a period of 2 weeks. Okay, guys, I was a little bit confused about why they cut the body up. Do you think this qualified as like a self-defense situation? Because, that beating looked pretty bad. And he's a minor, too. What do you think?
Well, technically it was self-defense because his mom was getting attacked and beaten by his dad. But at the same point, he pretty much bashed his skull all the way in with a hammer. So at that point, it's like, well, when did it stop becoming self-defense and just become murder? So and obviously they had to hack up the parts because it's easier to move than, a 200-pound man. And if you're doing it in pieces in small bags, it's probably even less noticeable. But
keep in mind what the time period was. The husband who probably drank with the local cops and knew the dirty ones and how they're making money, and that's why he wanted to get into that. If the cops show up and find their friend dead, and they're not going to say it was self-defense. No one's going to step up. Especially back in probably this took place maybe around the 60s, early 70s.
Yeah,
and back then it was a lot harder for a woman to say I was getting beaten.
Maybe that is the key.
She was just worried that no one's going to believe it. They're just going to think I did this or my son did this and, put him in juvie or something like that. It's better just to say he disappeared, especially again in the 70s, late 60s. They can't find people as easy as we can now. So
I wish there'd been a line like from Fisk to Vanessa saying like, my mom was worried because of the times. I wish there'd been something, because otherwise I'm sitting here thinking like, well, maybe it's because his mom didn't want him to go to therapy, but like he needs therapy. This kid's like, he looks like he's middle school to me. So you've got a 12-year-old. I can't imagine he's going to go to prison or jail for that. He'll probably go to a special school and he'll probably get the help he needs. But even back in the 90s, there was a pretty big stigma against therapy. Like, even if you watch some of the movies I grew up watching as a kid, like, they portray therapists as nut jobs. So that was kind of a societal thing. And there's been a shift in the last 30 years. So I wonder if maybe that's a piece of the puzzle. This was an interesting episode. There's some really good stuff to think about, but it could have been clarified a little bit in the script with just like one single line about why did they cut him up?
Again, it's what Doug said, though. I mean, he's not going to, the kid just killed a dude. They're going to institutionalize him. She's going to go to jail. So he owes money to I'm assuming some kind of crime boss, loan shark or something. So if he just disappears, people are just going to think that's where he went. They're not even going to question. So why bring that to the attention of the authorities when, but on the flip side of that, you dealt a lot of emotional trauma to this kid who's got no way of processing it. He can't talk about it to anybody. You got to go on acting like nothing ever happened. And for 2 weeks, you're carrying your dad's body parts down to a river. So, I mean, I can only imagine that's going to have some kind of psychological toll on a kid.
Yeah. Yeah, you're exactly right. Like, his mom's decision to cover this up, that is like the moment where he's like kind of denied the help he needs. And that arguably makes him into Fisk. Because if you fast forward to him as an adult, you can tell like he's a scary dude. He's a smart dude, but he does not know how to process emotions and anger. Like, you saw Gao say, like, you are too emotionally volatile. What'd she say? Something like that you're too emotional and that's causing you to slip up. I mean, I do think that we're supposed to see him as like, there's a piece of him that's still a kid inside. I don't know. I want to say on an emotional intelligence level, but at the same time, like, he is emotionally smart. He just hasn't dealt with the anger, I guess.
And he doesn't want to be that vulnerable, though, because that is perceived as weak because of his bully of a dad brought him up. And I mean, that's pretty much what his dad was. His dad was just a bully. And generally when people act tough, they're really not. They've got some insecurities going on and they have to make up for it by acting the tough. And that's how his dad was. His dad did not hesitate to verbally abuse his mom, call her stupid, calls his son, fat, obviously beating his wife because he thinks he's this tough guy and that's what he has to do. But I think deep down he was weak, and Fisk cannot be weak. And that's a sign of that, being emotionally either way is a sign of weakness to him.
The one other thing that could have been an out to why they decided to try to cover this up, maybe like his mom thought that the debt collectors, right? The bad people would be looking for his dad and they wouldn't come after the wife and child. I don't know. I mean, from like a government perspective, like, well, whoever's there is going to inherit the debt, right?
Yeah, especially if he borrowed it from mobsters or something like that. It's one thing if he bails and it's just like he's the one that took the loan, so that's like, okay, we'll keep an eye out for him. It's another thing when he dies and it's like, okay, well, you benefited from that loan, so now that goes on to you. If they're left to buy a husband, that makes it worse on them, I guess. Is kind of a way to look at it. He could have taken the money with him. I've never seen any money. I don't know what you're talking about. And where when he dies, they definitely have the money somewhere or it's been spent.
It sounds like we've come up with 2 or 3 possibilities here. I wish we had more, but these are good reasons for the time period, the debt, that maybe they would have tried to hide this. And I wonder, too, if he's translating his inaction, when he's trying to remember looking at the painting, that, I sat here in this chair and stared at this wall so many times and didn't help my mom. I'm not going to do that anymore. I wonder if he's translated that on to his mission to save the city. Like, I'm not going to do nothing.
Isn't it kind of weird, though, that his dad was wanting to do the same thing? He wanted to join the council because I can make a difference in this city. And that's why he told the bully kid, people can't see what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help this city and make it a better place, and people don't understand that.
Said.
That's what he was saying. But it goes on to now Fisk is saying the same thing. I want to help this city and I'm going to do what I got to do to help it. And it's kind of like he and his dad had the same thing, but I believe more in Fisk than,
I believe Fisk more than his dad. Marvel does a really good job, or has especially in the movies, but even comic books, the villains aren't always evil. Like, I don't see Wilson Fisk as an evil person. I see him as a less sarcastic peacemaker. I will do whatever it takes to make things better. If I have to kill 50 people in a apartment explosion, women, children, the whole thing, but it makes things better, I have no issue with that whatsoever. That's what, in his mind, it's like, the whole, you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. There are people out there who believe that.
It's kind of an anti-hero.
Yeah. And, I think growing up in an abusive family, that definitely had a lot to do with who he is. But, going throughout Marvel with just the movies, you look at Thanos, you look at Killmonger, what they were doing, it was like, okay, I understand. Not the right way, but a way. So yeah, I like how he's portrayed as the bad guy. He does bad things, but I don't think he's evil. I think he has good intentions, just going about it the wrong way.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what you view as evil. I mean, like, I see him as he wants to be a savior. He just doesn't know how to do it in the best way, right? So he wants to be a savior, but he's not really a healthy person himself. So whatever he does comes out of that unhealthiness,
Well, another way to look at it, if you take Wilson Fisk and you compare him to the Punisher, Wilson Fisk, he kills people. Now, he does deal in drugs and crime and stuff like that, but it's all to make things better. Punisher kills people. It's more of a revenge thing, but it's, I kill people to make things better. And yet we look at Punisher and it's like, he's a good guy. And Wilson Fisk is a bad guy. And it's like,
yeah.
Now, of course, Fisk is doing more illegal things than just killing bad guys, but, there's not a huge separation. There's a bit of a separation, but not a huge separation between the two of them. He's not Lex Luthor that wants to take over the world, or Darkseid that wants to destroy everything or take over the entire universe. He wants things to be good. He's just got to do bad things to make it happen. He believes, at least.
I guess that's how they get us to be sympathetic towards him. And I think this episode succeeds in that. I mean, are you sympathetic towards him after watching this episode?
Yeah, I mean, the way Vincent D'Onofrio plays the character really does it for you, too. I get a feel for Private Pyle back in Full Metal Jacket. Just this weird guy, and he's just like, oh, I just want to do good. And the way he talks, kind of awkwardly, and he'll start tearing up and sitting there. He had, it was kind of the same thing. This weird dude back in Full Metal Jacket, and you feel bad for him because he's just awkward. And it's like, I don't want to be a bad person. I don't want to do things wrong. I'm just awkward. And he was great back then, and he's great today doing that. So
there is one other thing that's interesting, and he finally opens up to Vanessa in this episode. Wesley brings her in because Wesley cares about what's happening with Fisk and realizes that he's at a point where he needs to let someone else in. So what Vanessa does is kind of therapeutic in a way. She helps him choose not to put on his father's cufflinks on his suit in the morning. And finally, after all these years, choose a different set of cufflinks. And I look at that as like he's actually made a little bit of progress in working through what happened to him as a kid there with her help. But he really needed that like a long time ago. I mean, it's good he's getting it now, but on the other hand, like what they have this emotionally close relationship, but yet like she kind of supports him in the wrong that he does. So it's really weird. It's a very complex relationship, which is fascinating to watch. She's helping him and yet enabling him to do more evil at the same time. So it's bizarre, but a good hook.
Yeah, she's got that same psychopathic tendencies that he does, It's like, well, we're doing good. We're doing bad things, but ultimately it's for a positive thing. So it's probably all right. Plus, he's rich.
Anything else on this episode before we wrap it up here?
They were going to out Fisk because no one knows his name. I can't pin all these crimes on somebody who no one knows. And then the next day, Fisk comes out and says, "Hi, I'm Wilson Fisk. I'm out here now. Now you know who I am, and I want to make things better." Is he running for office? Is that what that was, or is that just a press conference? What the?
I think it was just a press conference saying, "Hey, I'm a rich guy here in town, and I'm here to say I'm going to start doing things to help the city." So,
okay,
hi.
So he's
maybe
outed
he
himself.
thought that this stuff's going to come out about him at some point.
Now, was that in
Maybe
this
he thought
episode?
he was going to get ahead of it. Yeah, that's how the
very
episode
end
ends,
of this
'cause-
episode, he had a press conference on the stairs, and they were getting ready to out him in the paper. But he comes out on TV and says, "Hi, I'm Wilson Fisk, and I'm trying to do good for the city, and I don't want people to die and all this stuff. And I've been doing it through my, through this dude, and now I'm just going to come out, and here I am." And it makes
he's
a lot
always
of
able to
people happy.
spin the accusations against him from this point forward in his favor. So he's always got a story to put out there to prevent them from being able to make him look bad. So maybe this is just a strategy to get ahead of what they know is coming. I don't know. I felt like they maybe somehow knew Ben was going to get some info to the papers.
I think it was just a talking to where she said, "You're getting lazy and stuff, and you're not really in the shadows anymore because I was able to find your apartment. So eventually it's going to get out who you are. So before he can be outed, I'll just come out and do it this way." And if he, what is it, in the words of Michael Scott, if you control the media and you control the story, you have the story. And that's what he did. He pulled a Michael Scott.
But if you're watching along with us, the next episode might be one of the best in the entire series. So hang with us. We'll be back with the next episode.